Okay, on page 137, now the next part that we have to talk about after we've talked about federal taxes and state taxes are going to be your Social Security and Medicare. A couple days ago, Brandon asked what did FICA stand for, or FICA, okay, and that's what's coming up today. That's actually the shorthand thing for Social Security. It says Federal Insurance Contributions Act, or FICA for short, requires employers to deduct a percent of your income as taxes for Social Security to pay for retirement and disability benefits in Medicare, which provides medical insurance. Social Security tax rate is 6.2%. That rate does not change. On the first $97,500 of income, the Medicare tax rate is 1.45% with no limit on your earnings. Those two percentages in that reading part, they do not change. And that's for everybody in the nation. That's not just for this book's whatever. That's the same thing we pay, you pay if you work. Okay? Those are the percentages for everybody. The employer must contribute an amount that equals your contribution. The federal government uses Social Security to pay for retirement and disability benefits, and Medicare provides health insurance for those 65 and older. So once you hit that mark of 65 years old, then you can actually start getting some of those. Now, I've always heard, and I'm not that old, but I've always heard that when we get old enough, that Social Security will be gone. Why? Because people live longer now. So they're being paid on longer. When they initially set it up in the 30s, it was set up to be where it helped retirement and whatnot, but people didn't live as long as they do now. All right? So that money is being stretched out thinner. But as far as what they have for a formula, here's what they have. I'm going to give you a couple different ones, but here's what they say is they say tax withheld equals gross pay multiplied by tax rate. Now, that's the one that they give you. I'm going to give you two of them that are more specific, okay? Because of the fact that when I just give you that, some of you, that doesn't mean anything to you. So I'm going to actually write them as Social Security and as Medicare. I'm going to write them as two different ones, so that way you understand that this is what it is all the time, okay? When it comes to Social Security, I abbreviate it as SS. On your pay stubs, you will see it as FICA. Okay, so if you ever had a pay stub, and I know Brandon asked me a couple days ago what that meant, that's Social Security. So when you work, if you have FICA on there, or maybe it actually has SS, or they abbreviate Social Security at some point, that's what it is. What you do is you take your gross pay, and you multiply it by 6.2%. That's the percentage every time. Now, the one thing about that is you only pay for the first $97,500 that you make in a year. So, a couple years ago when the oil boom was really big, now it's not so much, but when the oil boom was big, I knew guys that were, or girls that were going out there right after they graduated and they were already making $100 and some thousand a year. Okay? Not so much anymore, but they were doing that right away. What this says is that up to $97,500 that they would pay for it. What happens once they got beyond that point? Then that didn't come out of their paycheck anymore. So once you got to $97,500 on your gross pay for the year, you don't have to pay Medicare anymore, or not Medicare, Social Security anymore. Okay.
Social Security is like for retirement and stuff like that?
Yes, Social Security is for retirement. So once you hit the age of 65, you can start getting Social Security. When you guys, for those of you guys who work, at some point during the year, you will actually get a statement from Social Security. It's usually a green and white, almost looks like a pamphlet. But when you open it up, inside there will actually tell you what your disability amount would be or your Social Security amount would be if you maintained your current earnings. It actually tells you exactly how much you're supposed to get per month if you maintain. I don't remember what mine was, but I get it every year. Where I look at it and go, okay, well, mine went up a little bit, so now that goes up a little bit. All right? But you will get one if you work. you should get one. It's all based on your social security number. Okay? But again, for those guys that were going out there and making over $100 and some thousand a year, once they got to the 97,500, they don't have to pay for it. So you need to be careful on problems where it might say how much came out in Social Security, and they've already earned $100,000 for the year. How much would come out in Social Security? Zero. Because of the fact that they've already paid all their stuff in, nothing more would come out after that. Okay? So, last night we were talking about, Matt and I were talking about his Pittsburgh Steelers won last night. Some of those guys make, what, $40,000 a game? Probably. I would anticipate Antonio Brown and Roethlisberger probably make at least that a game. So you think of that 97,500, after 3 games, Matt, they don't have to pay for it anymore. You know, if they make $40,000 a game, after 3 games, they don't have to pay for it anymore. Okay? So then that doesn't come out of their paychecks anymore. But Medicare always does. Medicare does not matter. Medicare says for 65, but if you have disability, you also get some of that paid for on Medicare. Okay? So Medicare is another one where it's gross pay, and it's multiplied by 1.45%. Okay? I know of some people that used Medicare and they were not 65 because they were children. Okay? A lot of times that goes for some of their care too. All right? So, just so that you know, what I did was I took that tax withheld, that's the one that the book gave you, and I made it more specific. Social Security, because that's the Social Security rate, and the Medicare, because that's the Medicare rate. So that way you don't have to worry about it. Okay. On the bottom of page 137, it says, number 1 has this for you. It says your monthly salary is $31,000 or $3,100. Your earnings to date that's a date equals $15,500. Now, the reason why they give you the earnings to date is because what if that number would have been over the 97,500? Then how much comes out for Social Security? None. That's why they give you the earnings to date. The $15,500 actually does nothing to the problem, other than if that number was above 97,500. Okay? If that number is not below it, then you have to do Social Security. If that number is higher than it, then the Social Security is 0. Okay?
Does that say earnings date?
Earnings to date. Yep. I know my handwriting's not very good with my finger. Okay? So, I know, but the ones I have are the ones that have the wider tips, and it just still a pain in the butt. I gotta get one of those smaller ones. So, to figure out Social Security, why did I put it as .062? Yeah, that's the decimal equivalent. All I did was move the decimal over. So what is 3,100 times .062? $192.20. Then Medicare, 3,100 times .0145. And again, like Anna said on the last one, that bottom number, that .0145, that is the decimal equivalent of 1.45%. How much money gets withheld for that? 44.85? 95. Okay, now, here's what the directions ask you. Find the amount withheld for Social Security, which was the top number, the 192.20, Medicare, which is the bottom one, and the total. What do they mean by total? Add them together, right? So what's 192.20 plus 44.95? Good, 237.15. Okay? That's number 1. So how many answers did it have? 3. Okay, even though that I only boxed in the total, I actually needed the other 2 to get there. Okay, so make sure you have them listed too.
In Social Security,
Mhm.
if you're like, you start collecting your Social Security and you stop working when you're 65,
Mhm.
does Social Security ever run out?
If it runs out, so what happens is right now is that we are paying for the people that are retired. That's what's
We're
happening.
not setting like our own.
No.
Oh, okay.
We are paying for them right now. And then our kids and their kids, Brandon, will pay for us when we get older. But the longer people live, the more that money gets spread out. You know what I'm saying? That there's talk that it would run out by whatever year. It hasn't yet, but the longer people live, the less money there's going to be. Because when it was initially set up, people didn't, life expectancy was in like the 70s. Now it's like in the upper 80s. So people are living longer now because of medicines and whatnot, whatever else. So, okay, number 2. Number 2 says your weekly salary is $350. Your earnings to date is $16,800. So my first question to you is, do you still have to do Social Security?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Social Security was $350. This chair's broken, or did you just break it? You just broke it. So what's $350 times 0.062? 21.7. Now, be very careful with your decimals. Some of you, again, I know I've said it before, but some of you are making your decimals in the wrong spot. And some of you might have told me that that was 2,170. Okay, so be very careful with your decimals. Because some of you are not putting decimals in there where there should be. Medicare.
Mr. Woodbeck,
Mr. Collin.
sorry if I'm interrupting. For number 2 that you're doing, how do you know when you're doing Social Security and Medicare?
In the directions it wants Social Security, then Medicare, then the total.
Alright, my bad.
Okay, so on all these, you should probably be doing every single one. Okay, and we'll talk about when we get to the next page. What's 350 times 0.0145? How much? 508 then? Because if it's 7.5, the 5 bumps that up to an 8. Good. So there's the 2. Now in order to figure out the total, add them together. Let's see if I can add them without a calculator. Looks like I can. And I got 2678. Okay. Then on the next page, on 3 through 6, it talks about Social Security tax withheld for column A, Medicare for column B, total for column C. Just like we had here, the only difference is that we it's not in a column format. 8 and 9, or 7 and 8, that's the same type of thing where they talk about how much they earn, find the Social Security and Medicare for number 7, and then on number 8 it says Social Security, Medicare, and total. Then when you get to 9 and 10, the last 2, now you're going to figure out how much did the company deduct from his paycheck for federal income, Social Security, and Medicare. Where do you find federal income again? That was from section 1. How do you do the federal income? No, not the total. How do you do the federal income tax?
Go in the back of the book.
That's where the back of the book comes into play. Okay, that was that tables on A2 to A5. Making sure if they're married or single and then looking it up in the chart, and that's the number that comes out. So be very careful when you get to 9 and 10 because they want you to look up one number from the back. And then Social Security, Medicare, that's the same thing that we've been doing on the screen. And then it'll ask for the total. So starting on page 137, going to 138, 1 through 10. So I know we did 1 and 2, but there's some freebies for you. If you actually wrote them down. If you didn't, then you just gotta do them yourself.